All right, and then you can start when you're ready.
Okay, cool. Um, okay, what I'll be talking about today is let students choose. Usually you're going to a class. Let's just all imagine we're back in high school, or some of you were, and you'll get into class and you may see some students, with their head down, maybe some sleep, coming in late with excuses after excuses of why they can't make it. And you just think to yourself, some of them really might have times where they just can't make it or be on time. And they're punished when they shouldn't be punished, when they have an actual reason for why they cannot be there. And I'm going to talk about why students should receive 3 skip days per semester. Um, One of some of my data I've received was from Alice in 2019, where 13% of students miss 16 plus days per year. And that isn't good, because some of those kids should really be there, and they're missing out on days where they can actually be learning. Also, another one is AP News, where 26 million students were chronically absent post pandemic, which means probably during the time of COVID or any time where a situation happened where kids had to miss school. That's roughly about 18 or more days, about 10%, and that's also not okay as why. And that's my reason for students are burnt out. They're tired. And then another one is, which I received from CDC data, 1 in 3 students are usually either sad or hopeless. On to my next one. Um, they're just it's just not about laziness. Some of these kids actually are going through things, whether that's feeling lazy. Some, well, not actually not being lazy, but they're not just lazy. Some may be going through mental problems, things back home, maybe the thought of being bullied or talked about and afraid of coming to school. Some may have family issues where they just can't be there at the time, having to watch over kids, or some just having to take the role of being, the adult in the family when there nobody else is, like, having to work or do things that they shouldn't have to do in the regular. Also, I would say, um, exhaustion. Some kids are just, just flat out tired. They're just doing so much over and over and over. It's starting to take a toll on them, and they just need that chance to, just to, get that rest and just like, regroup and, get it all back together. Um, the next one is, my solution, which I said previously, give students, 1 to 3 days, at least a chance at, a skip day. That can really motivate them to come even more to school, because that shows that teachers and the principal actually trust them enough to give them a day where they don't have to be, there at school, giving them a chance to where they have to, do things that's needed outside of school. Like I said previously, work, family problems, their mental problems, where they just have to just go home and just, just think, have that time to themselves where they don't have to just keep rushing and rushing and rushing. Um, Students keeping a schedule, well, students keeping structure will, better help their schedule. Um, Days are pre-approved. Also, what I say by that, have talks with your teacher and principal about the days, you want to take off. Don't just, pop up one day and say, oh, I use one of my skip days. That wouldn't be allowed. Also, let the students pick what days, they want to be out for. You know, um, Allowing them to choose, gives them trust and see that you trust in them. Also, going back to that, if you do, just do it out of, not caring about others and just skipping and skipping, skipping, you will receive a punishment, because I feel like all students shouldn't receive punishments for skipping school, but I just feel like the ones that do it out of the fact of just not caring should receive that punishment. Um, and go to the next one. Um, okay, cool. Um, my bad. Let me go back to my notes. When students, get to choose, they do better. Um, let me see. My bad, my apologies. Higher achieving students allowed to skip more will improve their grades. I received that from Golis LL 2023. I will cite that at the end, which I did. Another reason why is 85 to 90% of students choose harder work when they're giving the freedom to pick. So what I mean by that is, when you give the option of a student to choose, they'll typically go for the harder assignment due to them, like I said previously, again, trust and showing that, what, why not try it out rather than just being given to them without receiving an option. You know, a lot of teachers, they talk about the choices they make or the decision they make without knowing that the choices they had options. Students who choose their attendance policy may have a better attendance than a regular student because them are days that they're approved and they know that they can come on rather than coming on days that may seem optional to them and not all the way 100% sure. Um, let's go on to the next one. Being fair. Like I said previously, all students may not receive them skip days due to the fact of other students may ask you for theirs on that certain day, which I mean by just being fair all around. I wrote a quote up here when I said punishing students for skipping doesn't teach responsibility, it just hurts their grades because when you punish them, that doesn't really do much. That just hurts them even more, showing that you don't have enough trust in them to actually let them go do something when they know they'll be back. And what I mean by that, when you punch the grades, sending them to detention, SSS, what was it, SO, ISS, in school suspension, out of school suspension, that's not just doing nothing but just hurting them and hurting their chances to learn more and more and more. Because some students may not be able to receive and get to school on time due to them having to, walk or ride bikes, transportation not all being the same. Some students just having to go get it on their own without having that parent figure in their life to do or ask them to do the right thing. Um, I did a compare and contrast between skip days and no skip days. With 3 skip days, it's a lesser chance for them to skip. They're not as burnt out. They're given time to recollect their thoughts. They feel trusted and respected by the teachers. And in fear of 6 days, where students may feel sick, that may be their option to where they can use one of those skip days when they're feeling sick instead of just missing out for that reason. And what I mean by that, some students may have a real reason for missing school. So I feel like if they have a real reason for that, that shouldn't be taken away from one of their 3 skip days per semester. They should be also given an extra one on top of that. Now, if it gets out of hand, then we'll have to do like, some, reconstruction. Without skip days, students are going to skip anyway, regardless. Some students really don't care about the punishment. They go do it just because they can. They feel like they should. Students will feel burnt out, slouch, get to class late, tired, sleepy. Just like how I spoke about before, where, you're going to class and you'll see kids just sleep. Some may actually just be tired, not able to actually function. Their brain is just so tired and they're just exhausted from the day and just need a time off. And, that's the same, even if you're not in school, that, that comes to, working a job too. Some days you may not feel like coming into work and you just want to sleep in and you just want to chill because you may need that day. And also, students feel trapped, when they're at school every day after every day after every day, and they're not given a chance to where they can just be home. They feel like they're trapped. They feel like they just have to be there when they do, but it shouldn't be a problem when they have to be there when they should just come for their own good, rather than being forced to. Um, Students, schools should trust their students more. Um, Reason one, they should give them 3 days, a penalty of free skip day per semester. Let students, like I spoke about before, schedule their days off. So when days they want off, they can schedule those instead of just disappearing out the blue. And, focus on support, not punishment. So if a kid do miss a day, don't just immediately go to them about a punishment, send them away, ISS, out of school suspension, detention, talk to them, ask them for their reasoning, let them know, ask them why they did it, instead of just going straight to punishment because that's not doing nothing but hurting them. And they're just going to make them do it more and more and more because they obviously see that you don't care enough to see what's actually going on with them. Um, Thank you. I got my
Thank you. And I forgot to spotlight you too. I'm so sorry I didn't spotlight you.
I'm good, ma'am.
Yes, you're fine. Thank you.
No problem.
All right, Ashni, I'm coming to you.